Welcome to this oral presentation on FEMA's Public Assistance Program. Picture this. Your entire community is underwater, schools are destroyed, hospitals are flooded, roads are impassable. Now imagine having to rebuild everything while navigating a complex federal regulatory process. This is the daily reaction and reality of FEMA's Public Assistance Grant Program. We'll discover in the next few minutes the journey from disaster to recovery can be full of challenges to public administrators. I am Robert Villar, and today we're examining FEMA's Public Assistance Program. The Federal Emergency Management Agency's Public Assistance Grant Program represents the cornerstone of America's disaster recovery system. It was authorized under the Robert T. Stanford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, basically provides federal grants to help communities rebuild after presidentially declared disasters. Since 1988, the program has distributed over $100 billion in assistance. Today, we'll examine how this critical program operates, who it serves, and why understanding its complexities matter for effective disaster recovery. The Public Assistance Program operates through 7 distinct work categories, each with its own unique rules, timelines, and reimbursement rates. Under categories A and B, which handle emergency work, these actually are the ones that I have had the most experience in as part of my public administration career over the last 20 years. But under the emergency work, typically we have 6 months in order to complete this work. Primarily includes debris removal and emergency protective measures like evacuations and emergency repairs. Once we get into categories C through G, we're addressing permanent reconstruction, and this is a much longer time frame. These projects must get underway within 2 years and must be completed within 5 years. Each category, again, requires different documentation and approval processes in order to comply with the requirements. So let's look at the eligibility and who can apply and what qualifies. So basically, FEMA first looks at applicant eligibility and then work eligibility. And by applicant eligibility, it includes state and territorial governments, tribal nations, local government entities, as well as qualified private not-for-profit organizations. In order for the work to be eligible, it must meet 4 fundamental criteria. First, it must be the result of the declared disaster. Secondly, it must be located within the designated disaster area. Thirdly, the applicant must have legal responsibility for the damaged facility. And fourth, the work must be the responsibility of an eligible applicant type. So the PA process follows a structured 9-step flow designed to ensure accountability while facilitating recovery. It begins when the governor requests a presidential declaration of disaster. This triggers FEMA's preliminary damage assessment to determine eligible assistance types. FEMA will then conduct applicant briefings explaining the process to the entities, performing inspections, and developing project scopes of work with each applicant. A critical point in this process, which may delay, is the environmental and historic preservation review. And so basically all permanent work must follow NEPA guidelines, National Environmental Protection Act, Policy Act. After the FEMA clearance, after the NEPA clearance, FEMA obligates funds through a formal commitment process. Applicants must then implement the projects under federal monitoring, submit quarterly reports, etc. And the process concludes with the final reconciliation and closeout where there's a comparison of actual cost compared to approved estimates. This process, it's going to, on average, take 18 months for emergency work, but for those permanent projects, can take significantly longer based on the delivery timeframe of the project. So, what is the cost share and funding mechanism? Well, basically, under the FEMA standards, 75% federal funding and a 25% non-federal match is typical. And so that non-match comes from either the state or local entities, whether that's the local government, city, or eligible not-for-profit. However, the president can authorize increased federal cost share anywhere from 90% even to 100% in certain circumstances. The money flows from the US Treasury to FEMA, then to the states, and ultimately to the recipient. So some of the strengths of the public assistance program include comprehensive disaster coverage, substantial funding capacity, strong legal foundations, robust accountability measures. However, some of the challenges that persist include administrative complexities, lengthy environmental review process, burdensome federal oversight programs, and the possibility of equity gaps where a community which has greater resources can better be suited to pay for the non-federal match. So as we go through this, I think you'll find this very important in your future careers as a public administrator.